If you don't mind me asking, and dude, like, I want you to feel as comfortable on this podcast. Yeah. So if there's anything I ever ask you, or you're like, hey, I don't want to talk about it, let's move on.
Then you asked it, why you not a movie star? I didn't want to be a movie star. This the same bro that hated on Bernie with this same thing.
It started with a firestorm and ended with scorched reputations. When Katt Williams sat down for his now notorious interview, he didn't just throw shade, he dropped napalm. With the confidence of a man who's been quiet too long and the receipts of someone who's kept score for years, Katt came for Steve Harvey like a comedian possessed, and not just with jokes. These were accusations, heavy and personal. He didn't flinch, he didn't hold back, and above all, he didn't forget. Steve, he said, didn't just betray him, he betrayed the culture. You think I'ma let you on Bernie and then come get me? He snapped. A line that hit social media like a gut punch. Because that wasn't just a celebrity spat, it was a declaration of war.
And Katt Williams was that guy. In 2005 to 2008, right in there, Katt, we were looking at Katt like, wow.
This wasn't just about egos clashing on a stage. It was a decades-old wound, bleeding in front of 29 million people. Katt called Steve out for allegedly undermining fellow comics, faking support while privately pulling strings to shut down careers. And at the top of that betrayal list, the late, great Bernie Mac. According to Katt, Steve didn't just compete with Bernie, he actively blocked him. Tried to snake movie roles, one of them being Bernie's iconic spot in Ocean's 11. Bernie allegedly told that story himself, straight to Ed Lover, who confirmed it on his podcast. Bernie told me out of his own mouth. And that alone cracks open one of Hollywood's best-kept secrets. Steve Harvey has built an empire on being the lovable everyman with the quick jokes and Sunday suits. But Katt painted a very different picture. The Mr. Potato Head of comedy, propped up by networks and hair pieces, backstabbing his peers behind the scenes. He even accused Steve of ripping off Mark Curry, stole everything Mark Curry had, he claimed, right down to the sitcom concept and the suit and fate persona. The implication was loud and clear. Steve wasn't just trying to win, he was trying to rewrite history and crown himself king while burying the true royalty.
The same Steve that went to go watch Mark Curry do his whole sitcom and then stole everything Mark Curry had.
And then the Bernie Mac bombshell went nuclear. We already knew there had been tension during the original Kings of Comedy tour. Cedric the Entertainer all but admitted as much, calling the conflict a clash between alpha males. But Katt took it further. He said Steve hated Bernie's shine, resented that Bernie was the real closer, the real fan favorite. According to Katt, Steve's insecurity festered for years, morphing into sabotage. And when Bernie passed away in 2008 from complications tied to his illness, that tension never got resolved. The public feud supposedly settled. But now we know, behind the smiles, it was anything but.
You talked about how there was almost another tour.
Right.
But there was essentially a beef between Bernie Mac and Steve Harvey?
Yes.
And it wasn't just Katt saying it. Bernie's daughter, Janice McCullough, posted a heartfelt response, thanking Katt for speaking up. She didn't even know him personally, but said his words felt genuine. Because some people only showed love for Bernie once he was gone. Not Katt. He refused to let the disrespect slide. So the question hung in the air like smoke from a blown-out candle. If Steve could turn on Bernie, the comic who brought raw truth and soul to every stage he touched, and who else was disposable to him? That brings us back to Katt. His refusal to replace Bernie on the King's tour wasn't about ego, it was loyalty. "You not gonna throw dirt on a man and then ask me to dance in it," he essentially said. That loyalty has turned into fire, and that fire has now engulfed Steve Harvey's public image. His carefully curated persona as the voice of wisdom, the host with heart, the guy who turned pain into power. It's being peeled away, layer by layer. We're watching the crown slip. And what's emerging underneath is uncomfortable.
King, I got the offer.
Then what happened?
But I turned it down.
Why?
Because you on Bernie. And I know the truth.
Now let's talk about what makes this entire feud even messier, because while Steve's out here swatting down career allegations and trying to stay above the noise, he's got another storm gathering at home, and it's not just drama. It's scandal. His wife, Marjorie Harvey, has become the target of some truly jaw-dropping revelations. We're talking past marriages to not one, but two men with connections to major international rings. That's not tabloid fluff. That's FBI-pardoned, prison-sentenced realness. Jim Townsend, the first husband, was sentenced to life for trying to buy 40 kilos of white powder, the kind that doesn't come with sugar packets. And while Marjorie was never indicted, Townsend has claimed the authorities had enough on her to make him cut a deal to keep her name clean. Let that sit for a minute. A convicted ex allegedly making a legal sacrifice to keep the future Mrs. Harvey out of the courtroom. Then came husband number 2, Donnell Woods, also allegedly involved in the same game, also tied to federal investigations, also out of the picture now. Lionel is said to be the father of Lori Harvey, who's now a full-blown celebrity in her own right. But all of that glam, all of those front-row fashion weeks and soft-focus Instagram filters, they're sitting on top of a foundation that reads more like a crime doc than a family scrapbook.
Now, I'm a Christian, but I ain't that good a Christian. You know.
Steve has gone on record more than once praising Marjorie for saving his life, calling her his rock, his muse, his everything. But how does that square with the whispers that her past was at best complicated and at worst radioactive? They married in 2007, and while they've made the blended family work in public, insiders say the beginning wasn't smooth. Some of Steve's own children were reportedly not on board. Then, just when things seemed to stabilize, rumors started flying again, not just about the past, but about possible secrets in the present. There was talk, unconfirmed but persistent, that Marjorie had been entertaining, let's call them extracurricular conversations, the kind that force PR teams into overdrive and leave celebrity gossip blogs salivating.
Authenticity, I felt like more, and I could be wrong, I don't know your guys' relationship. It felt like you guys had like a relationship before and then something bitter in between it. What's the real?
It's a lot. And it's starting to look like the heat Katt Williams brought down might not be the biggest fire Steve Harvey's dealing with. Because while he's fending off accusations of betrayal in the comedy world, he may be standing on quicksand at home. Every time Marjorie's name trends, it's not about charity events or couture launches. It's whispers about past entanglements, resurfaced documents, and tell-all memoirs written by men with receipts and nothing to lose. Jim Townsend's book, Snakes in the Garden, yeah, that's real. Written in prison, released after his pardon. And according to sources, it doesn't hold back.
Focusing on the positive. Stop allowing negativity all the time to permeate into your.
So here's what we're looking at. A man once held up as a role model, now being painted as a career saboteur, a joke thief, and a performer whose nicest suits couldn't cover up the shade behind the scenes. And standing beside him, a woman whose life reads like a Hollywood thriller. Love, luxury, and a past full of locked doors that people are now trying to pry open. What happens when those doors swing wide? What gets revealed about the empire they've built and the cracks running through its foundation? Because if Steve Harvey could allegedly undermine Bernie Mac, a legend whose very name commands respect, what lines wouldn't he cross to protect his place at the top? And if loyalty to Bernie is what drove Katt to light this match, then the question isn't just who's telling the truth. It's how long everyone else can keep pretending not to smell the smoke.
And, you know, I've heard Kevin Hart say certain things, but, you know, I've stayed quiet about it.
So how does someone go from being married to two different men, indicted in multi-state substances operations, to sipping bubbly on a private jet with one of Hollywood's biggest stars? That's the question people have been asking about Marjorie Harvey for years, and lately the whispers have turned into full-blown side-eyes. Her first husband, Jim Townsend, got a life sentence after getting caught in an undercover sting, attempting to purchase what authorities said was enough white powder to keep half of Memphis buzzing for months. The FBI had him locked in, and reportedly they had Marjorie in their sights too, until Jim made a deal to protect her, allegedly sparing her from an indictment that could have wiped her off the map. According to Townsend, the feds had enough dirt on her to press charges, but instead of a courtroom, she walked into her next marriage. and straight into luxury.
They just tell the stories. Thanks to my wife, I'm where I am. You said that about the first wife. You forget that?
Then came Donnell Woods. Yes, another man with alleged ties to substances. Another name on the federal radar. Another man Marjorie married and left behind. Donnell, said to be a cousin of Townsend, kept a lower profile, but his reputation followed him. And what did Marjorie do after these chapters? Reinvented herself. Lavish resorts, front row seats at Fashion Week, and charity galas with matching his and hers Rolexes. But let's not forget, glamour doesn't erase a paper trail. And while her current image screams high society, her past reads like something out of a courtroom drama. The irony? The very same public that praises her elegance still wonders what strings were pulled, what names were dropped, and what secrets were sealed away. That speculation only got louder when Townsend dropped his memoir, Snakes in the Garden, teasing out what he called truth the public was never supposed to know. The book, written during his time behind bars and released after his presidential pardon, lays out a timeline that overlaps uncomfortably with Marjorie's current fairy tale. One moment, she's reportedly pregnant during a federal bust. The next, she's raising children in luxury with a man worth well over $100 million, a man who credits her with saving his life. But if the foundation of that life is based on stories never fully told, what happens when the silence breaks?
Why would you do all of that man's stuff that he did on his show on yours, and then do the dude's stand-up when you go on the road?
The cracks in the glass started to show more recently. Rumors of infidelity burst through the tabloids, pointing fingers not just at Steve, but at Marjorie. The couple denied it all, of course, but the damage was done. The denials came fast, but the internet doesn't forget, and it doesn't forgive. Once the scent of scandal is in the air, people start connecting dots, whether they belong together or not. The question isn't just whether someone cheated. It's whether the trust Steve's been so vocal about, trust that he's described as life-saving, has been misplaced. Behind the smile, behind the talk show banter and best-selling books, is there a man slowly realizing that the woman he risked it all for might have been playing her own game? And what happens to a brand like Steve Harvey's when its most polished surface starts to flake? His entire image is rooted in wisdom, loyalty, family, and moral clarity. From Family Feud to Think Like a Man, the guy built a fortune by playing the wise uncle, the Southern gentleman who knows right from wrong. But if the allegations start hitting harder, or worse, if law enforcement ever decides to reopen certain chapters from Marjorie's past, then what? Can the man who preaches honesty and integrity survive a scandal involving federal investigators and two men his wife once called husband?
And because the person that's telling you what they say is true is speaking eloquently, don't be deceived by that.
And let's not forget the children. This isn't just about red carpets and bank accounts. Steve and Marjorie's blended family includes 7 children and multiple grandchildren. They've marketed themselves as the modern-day Brady Bunch with Gucci belts and jet lag. But now, insiders are beginning to question whether that unity is more for the gram than real life. Multiple reports suggest that not all of Steve's kids approved of the marriage at first, and that tension never fully dissolved. And if the foundation starts to shake, the entire house may not be as stable as it looks. And while Steve battles on the home front, his enemies are multiplying in the public sphere. Because make no mistake, Katt Williams may have thrown the first stone, but he is not alone. Ed Lover backed him. Bernie Mac's daughter posted a video praising him. Even Cedric the Entertainer, who tried to stay neutral, ended up confirming the beef between Bernie and Steve was real enough to derail the kings of comedy from ever reuniting. So now Steve is surrounded, publicly defending himself against ghosts of friendships gone bad, privately fending off rumors about betrayal in his own home. This isn't just a scandal, it's a siege.
You stop it. That man was funnier than all of y'all, and y'all thought y'all had one over on him. You thought he was black and ugly.
There's another layer here, one that doesn't make headlines but bleeds through the cracks. What happens to a man's psyche when the world he built begins to turn on him? For Steve Harvey, who rose from homelessness to a multi-million-dollar empire through sheer grit and showmanship, the sting of public betrayal may cut deeper than we think. He's always carried himself with bombast. The tailored suits, the motivational sermons, the king of the mountain confidence. But when that image starts unraveling, what's left beneath it? We're watching a man who spent decades crafting his own mythology, now being forced to answer for it in real time. And the emotional cost of that kind of reckoning doesn't come with a camera-ready script. There's a theory circulating among industry insiders that Steve's appetite for success may have bred as many enemies as accolades. From rival comics to former collaborators, the list of those who've hinted at past grievances is growing louder. The feud with Katt Williams might just be the most visible example of a deeper pattern, one where ambition edges out empathy and charisma masks competition. It's no secret that Steve has always played to win, but in doing so, has he also alienated those who once stood by him? Even if half the rumors are exaggerated, the emotional toll of being portrayed as a backstabber by people he once considered peers could be shattering, especially for a man who prides himself on loyalty and legacy.
He got there early, and he was on the radio station talking about, I'm gonna destroy Steve Harvey. And I'm going, wait, we're doing comedy. You know, we're not rappers, this ain't a beef.
And that's the irony. Because Steve Harvey's brand isn't built on chaos, it's built on order. He's the guy who offers answers, who fixes lives on talk shows and gives men advice on how to be better. But now, he's the one under a microscope, his decisions, relationships, and intentions being picked apart. The sense of control he's worked so hard to maintain is slipping. And as his world is recast not as inspirational but possibly opportunistic, we have to ask, has the spotlight he chased for so long become the very thing burning him from the inside out? And what if more people speak up? Because every time someone opens their mouth, another door creaks open. We've already got whispers of joke theft, role snatching, backroom politics. Add that to a wife with 2 ex-husbands tied to substances cases and a daughter born into that legacy, and suddenly, the Harveys don't look like a royal couple. They look like the subjects of a future docuseries. One former talent manager told us, off the record, Hollywood protects its own until the scandal gets too loud to ignore. And right now, the noise around Steve and Marjorie is reaching a pitch that even PR spin can't drown out.
You feel that the beef between Bernie Mac and Steve Harvey was because Steve Harvey was getting a lot of network love during the time and Bernie Mac not so much?
Yeah, and then Bernie started to get it.
The irony here, Steve may be facing the exact fate he allegedly pushed Bernie Mac toward. Bernie, once celebrated and beloved, spent the final years of his career battling rumors and whispers. Now Steve's facing a similar storm, but with more to lose. Bernie had nothing to hide. But Steve, his past alliances, business deals, and now his marriage are all under the microscope. One wrong move, one unexpected court filing, or one tell-all interview from someone close to Marjorie, and the empire might fracture in real time. So where does this leave us? With more questions than answers, and a sense that we're only scratching the surface. Steve Harvey built a name that stood for clean comedy, Christian values, and second chances. But as the skeletons creep out of the closets and the alliances start shifting, that name might not mean what it used to. And Marjorie? She's smiling on yachts, but behind the gloss, the past still lingers. If she made deals to escape her history, how long before those deals come due? And if Steve really believes she saved his life, has he even realized what it's costing him? What will happen next in this high-stakes saga? Will Steve weather the storm, or are we about to witness one of Hollywood's most dramatic downfalls? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because something tells us this story isn't over. In fact, it may have only just begun. Stay sharp, stay curious, and until next time, keep your tea hot and your eyes open.